So this BBC piece was written about China's masculinity problem. And man, do I have a lot to say about this. Right? I mean, this is going to come before, some of the other videos that I just had lingering in the background. I had some Second Amendment videos, and I was going to address mediocre tutorials. But nah, this I'm going to take this in a completely different direction than everybody else. Right? I even ran it by Cap because I sent him the article. I saw it was on Dennis's page, or he had a video, and I said, wait, China and masculinity. I know this has been an ongoing problem. I even did a video talking about the black male masculinity versus Asian male masculinity, and the Western ideas of masculinity versus the Eastern ideas of masculinity, and bringing it all together about this feminization going on with men globally. And I've listened to several videos. I even watched videos where I had to get the translation because the women were up there speaking Mandarin, and the woman was asking other women, and it looked like a Chinese mall, about what they thought about masculinity in China and Asian men and everything. And for the most part, what the women had to say wasn't very positive about Chinese men. Now, in my opinion, this is the angle that I'm coming at it. The Chinese government fucked up. The entirety of the Chinese government fucked up. Completely. And the Chinese government, they're not going to take responsibility. The Chinese government never takes responsibility, never takes blame for the situation that they created. I read this article. I read what's the guy's name? Seafood. Seafood. That's like a kung fu master. But I forget what his name is. And I read the article. What's his name? Hold on. Let me scroll. Zifu. And the home environment was partly to blame. The Chinese boys are raised by their mothers and grandmothers. Bullshit. See, like, it was so funny, is right. So you get all the Western men, they want to jump on it like, see, yeah, it's because, these Chinese boys are being raised by their mothers and their grandmothers. You forget that in China, men get custody of the children. Okay, because remember, it is a totalitarian, basically dictatorship where Xi Jinping runs everything. China's been like that since the 50s, and Mao Zedong and the Long Walk, or whatever it was called, and the way that they took out all the people that disagreed with them and got rid of all the people that smoke opioids, put them to death, all that stuff. Okay, that was a different generation. And while China and its, the people in the government want to sit there and they want to blame and put all the responsibility on, the mothers and the grandmothers, and that's why. No, that's not why. That's not why. Because China is not the West. There's no social movement of feminism and all this LGBT and all that stuff going on in China. It's China. I mean, you got that place up in the western province where they're taking the Muslims and they're putting them in these internment camps to be re-educated, right? Like Vasari and Killzone. They're to be re-educated. You know what I mean? You're not going to have a bunch of protesting Chinese feminists with a bunch of signs. They will disappear like Tiananmen Square and be re-educated because it is a totalitarian dictatorship. That is what China is. You got Jack Ma, he's disappearing. Whole bunch of other Chinese billionaires disappearing. China kills its alpha males. They try to do this thing where, this is the irony, right? China goes and they ban hip hop because, the problem with the African Americans and hip hop and the way that you have this rebellious nature. We can't have that. But then they go and they ban K-pop because all the feminine ways that those men act and behave and the makeup and all that other stuff, right? And they try to have this squeaky clean image in China when it comes to Chinese men. This squeaky clean, right? just looking like a forever eternal schoolboy, right? They had one guy, they talked about it in the article where, he had to apologize, you know what I mean, for smoking, it got caught smoking a cigarette, an illegal cigarette or something. I don't even know what the laws are because everybody smokes in China. But, he got to go up there and apologize. Doibuchi, you know what I'm saying? He got to go up there and apologize. I'm like, apologize for what? See, the thing is what you got to understand about China, and this is why I'm saying all of this is the Chinese government's fault, which will get this video completely banned, even though YouTube's banned in China. But I'm saying all of this is China's fault, the government's fault. Okay, it's just like it's China's fault why there's 70 million more men than there are women because of that whole one child rule. And then you had the whole infanticide with female babies because, the male is, the one that takes care of the family because there is no retirement. There is no 401k. There is no social security. Right. So the sons have to take care of the parents. The idea is the son's going to earn more money. So he's taking care of the parents. Right. And that's how it's supposed to be, right? They're like little farm boys, they go and they move to Shenzhen and they go and they work in the factory and then they're supposed to send money home to take care of their parents and whatnot, even though the conditions are horrible and they got to create nets to prevent people from jumping off of the buildings and committing suicide, right? Go look into that. But the main thing here is, and this is what's so funny, they're blaming the teachers. Oh, it's because we don't have enough. We need more sports, and we need more masculine this, and boys don't want to be war heroes anymore, right? And they got all these movies in China where the West is evil, China is great. And they got all the martial artists and everything. But right, here's the thing, right? The martial artists were banned underneath the Communist Party to teach people how to fight. That was banned, right? In the West, we look at, Asian men through the eyes of samurais and ninjas before all this K-pop stuff and everything. A samurai, I know that's Japanese, but I'm saying, you have Bruce Lee, Kung Fu, martial arts, wushu, all that stuff, right? That's how we looked at it. I mean, even Wu-Tang Clan, you want to talk about, the exchange of culture. You know what I mean? I mean, Kung Fu and hip hop is like the best peanut butter jelly sandwich that you could ever make, right? So I'm saying you had the Wu-Tang Clan. They were influenced by the Kung Fu flicks that they saw in the 70s, right? And so the whole idea of, masculinity, growing up, even for myself, was completely different than what it is now. And I'm saying China as a government has done everything in its power to basically not have men who are going to be what essentially the definition of masculinity is, right? Because think about it. If I'm China, I'm the Chinese government, right? Everybody's got to obey. Right? I'm in there. I'm kicking in the door. You Chinese Muslims, we're going to put you in camps because we need you to follow us and you got to be like the Han Chinese. All you Tibetan bitches, okay? You Dalai Lama, you get out of here. You know what I'm saying? We taking over Tibet. We running shit in Tibet because all the water, that we use to grow our crops comes from the glaciers in the Himalayas. So we got to take over Tibet, right? Oh, Hong Kong, you think you getting out of here? Nope, we gonna control you bitches too. Right? So think about the mentality of the Chinese government, right? And then they got that long ass, all this is the South China Sea, and we're going to control all of this, right? Think about the mentality that they have. And now they're like, oh, we need more masculine men because we don't, like, in other words, the issue here is the fact that these men that China is seeing for their future are not useful to the state. Now, this is where China, to me, ends up sounding like some African American women, where they go in there and they think that they can control masculinity, that they can tap it out, that they can somehow get everything that they want from masculinity and not get any of the toxic stuff. Right? So, let's look at, what does it really mean to be masculine, right? What is China trying to do, right? China wants to have a strong military presence. They go out there and challenge these other nations and whatnot, but they got a bitch ass problem, right? And it's like, okay, well, how do you do that if you got a bitch ass problem? In other words, being a man, the aspect of being a man is you gotta show who's alpha. And see, the problem with the Chinese government is the Chinese government itself wants to be the alpha. So it crushes all opposition, even internally within the borders of its own country. You see? And so you end up with these little meek, timid, as it said in the article, obedient boys, right? You know, that they're supposed to have some Chinese patriotism and all that. Right? They go and they create these boys that act like women that follow the rules and follow what's done because you're in China, goddammit. If you don't listen to us, we'll kill you. Right? You sell drugs in China, death. Right? You break the rules in China, death. You go up against the state in China, death. But yet somehow they think that they're going to create a bunch of men who have it in them to challenge other races of men or other nations and have that sort of assertiveness about themselves, but not challenge the authority of the Chinese government. And that is what's not going to happen. And that is why China is failing, its men. Because they're trying to do the same thing that women try to do, is where they try to have masculinity on tap. They want to have masculinity to where they can control masculinity and then not get any of the toxic effects of masculinity. And it's a balancing act. It's like when you look at America and you look at the white people that went and stormed the Capitol and whatnot, right? America's this free country. We're able to have guns and all that stuff, right? But right, it's good if America goes to war and goes off and fights the Germans. Yeah, it's good to have Americans who know how to use rifles and Americans who know, that have a masculine sense about themselves as men in American society. You just sprinkle patriotism on it and you're good. But see, when the government be doing too much, like what you see with what the Democrats are currently doing, and then you have all this attack on masculinity, the LGBT and everything else like that, right? Then you have where the right is the only space where masculinity can exist and flourish. I already said it. In the next 20 years, the only masculine men that you're going to have are dudes that came out of jail, white Marines and biker gangs. And on the black side, you're going to have the classic, thugs and bad boys and all that other stuff. But you're going to have a dwindling number of men that are not only productive to their families, which again, we're just over here destroying patriarchy, but also productive for the state, for the benefit of the state, which again leads me back to we want to take everybody's guns away and we want to do this and do that and change all this and toxic masculinity and yada, 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 right? But for a long time, America and the West has had a lot more balance than China. China wanted absolute, total totalitarian control, right? It's a dictatorship. You do as I say. If you don't, we coming for you. We make you disappear. We send the secret police to your house and everything else like that. How do you have assertive men in a society like that? You criticize the state. You know what I'm saying? You're done, right? You disappear for several months. Right? You challenge the state, right? You challenge the police, right? You're done. But and yet China, like in other words, China, the government of China has created a state of all women. It's essentially all women. I mean, seriously speaking, where can a Chinese man assert his manhood? You're never going to get a situation where a Chinese man can assert his manhood the way that China wants them to assert their manhood, which is like the manhood of the way that men assert their manhood in the West, without taking on a Western persona, because that's who China is going up against. China is going up against the West. I mean, it's the same problem. They talked about this with the Arab militaries. Where with the U.S. military has the approach where there's more individual initiative from the combat units. The commanding officer, you go and watch movies like Fury, there's more personality, to the groups. They know what's going on the ground. The commanding officers trust them. They make the call. They say, okay, Captain, I'm trusting you on this mission. And they do that. All other militaries around the world, especially like with the Arabs and even Chinese, it's top down. The men are not encouraged to take initiative, because taking initiative is the cousin to what? Challenging the authoritarian state. That was the word I was looking for, authoritarian. Challenging the authoritarian state. And so China doesn't want that. China wants everybody to be like, China wants to be like everybody where, is the bitch, and we're your bitch. And we have to do what China says, because otherwise China will come down with the wrath of God. And I'm like, well, China, you do that to your own men. You do that to your own people. But yet China thinks that China is something like, oh, well, how come, where's our manly men? I'm like, you killed them all. What are you talking about? You suppressed them all, if not killed them all. You can't have a state, a nation, where you want all members of the state to be obedient to the state. But then you want them to have the qualities of manhood and assertiveness that actually would make those men capable of challenging men outside of that nation who don't share the same values, who don't share the same orientation. You know what I'm saying? Like, again, this is the same thing that I talk about in the black community when we talk about manhood in the black community and raising bitch ass sons, and then questioning, how are they going to take on Ray Ray and Pookie? Obviously, in order to take on Ray Ray and Pookie, they would have to have some of the qualities of Ray Ray and Pookie. But, oh, no, we don't want that. Toxic masculinity, rape, and pillage. Oh, no, we can't have that. Okay, well, then you get a bunch of bitch-ass young men that are not capable or in the position or have the capacity or the mentality to go and run up on those dudes that ran up on that black woman in New York in the liquor store. You see? You can't have it both ways. Manhood is not a light with a dimmer. It's either on or it's off. It's on or it's off. And you're going to have residual effects that spill out that the state might not like. But that's the reality of this. It's like the Second Amendment. Yeah, if everybody has access to firearms who's not a criminal, you may have that situation in Scranton where the guy, blew his neighbors away because they were shoveling snow on the other side of the street. You may have a situation where criminals get access to guns, or you get a mass shooter and everything. It comes with the territory. Just as in a nation that has free speech, in a nation with free speech, the president can be criticized and the state can be criticized. It comes with the territory. But see, people, they want to create this situation like, where they have absolute and all and total control. That's not realistic. And China is finding that out. The other thing, now they can try to fuck with the dials and do all type of, shit that they want to do to try to get, it to work. In my opinion, I don't think it's going to work. I don't. Hold on a second. The other thing, one of the biggest problems with the Chinese government, and trust me, I know some Chinese people, and I've had these conversations with them and about how they function and orient and everything. And there's certain things about Chinese society and culture that I can respect. Right? They're very homogenous society, and homogenous societies and nations, everybody's kind of on the same page. The problem with China is China has the classic, respect your elders. Elders know everything. You don't challenge your elders. That China runs deep with that. And not only that, China runs with it's surrounded by nothing but yes men. Right? Because I'm saying you can see China's getting slapped with all type of human violations and human rights violations, this, that, and the third, blah, blah, blah. But the point of the matter is, like, let's say Xi Jinping came up with an idea, right? He said, I want to do this. Like, do you think Xi Jinping surrounds himself with a bunch of people that he goes back and forth with and debates? Like, it's like myself and Captain Solo, right? When I don't just come on the internet and just start spewing and making a video. I'll run shit by men that I respect or men that have generally speaking, let's say we have our areas where we agree, but we have a lot of areas where we disagree, and we will go back and forth, and we will, discuss. You don't really see that with China. With China, it's like, supreme leader said this, and this is the way that it's going to go. Okay? Because even if you look at Xi Jinping has, he has gotten rid of many of the people that were opposite. All of a sudden, they got cases and all other type of stuff. And the Chinese court has like a 98 percentile, like, verdict of or finding people guilty. You see? So basically all naysayers, end up, being executed. And so no ideas get bounced off. Like there is no, fuck it, let's go with that. Or what do you think? Like, what do you think about why I can't do this or that? They don't do that. It's supreme leader said this, and that's all there is to it. They don't have a whole bunch of foresight because they don't allow for there to be the free exchange of ideas, and people say, okay, this is bullshit. I think he's full of shit. I think he's full of shit. Wait a minute. This right here. You make a valid point. We need to examine this point. They don't do that. If they did do that, then they would have had the foresight to recognize that whole one child per family, it was going to create a situation where girls were being killed and more boys were being born, which is why you have the situation that you have, today with 70 more million Chinese men than women. So all these guys, they don't even have anybody to marry. And this creates all type of frustrations, where in America, they don't have mass shootings, but in China, they have mass stabbings. And the mass stabbings are a way for, these Chinese men that basically, they're not upwardly mobile because Chinese society doesn't really allow for that, and they're frustrated. And that's their way of getting at the wealthy and the elite Chinese by killing their children, since, again, they don't have social security or any of that stuff. So your children are your retirement. So if somebody goes into a school with a knife and starts stabbing everybody up, right, and one of your kids is one of the ones that die, well, there goes your future, as it pertains to old age. So China's got a whole bunch of problems that China don't want to talk about. Okay, but again, it's just, I'm like, so let me get this. So you going to just do this, and you're not going to run it by anybody that even has the balls. Again, going back to masculinity and manhood and courage. Again, courage being the key word. You don't have anybody that even has the courage to say, well, I think you're wrong, Xi Jinping. I think you're wrong, supreme elite leaders on the Communist Party Council. I think you're wrong, and this is why. That they have this whole attitude of everybody must be in agreement, and yes, and they just stand there and they clap and all that other shit, and they don't run the simulations. They don't run the simulations. They don't run the scenarios, especially, we could talk about, and China putting satellites up here and everything. This social aspect, this idea that they have absolute and total social control. Look, there's just certain constants in this world that when you try to control a people to that extent, it is going to have residual effects and fallout. And I've been saying this on my channel. I've been saying this about masculinity, manhood, a lot of the things that I see in the black community. I've talked about us being the canaries in the coal mine. And it's just hilarious. Everybody swears that they can go out here and they can go up against nature, and that they can go up against, people having proper orientations, and that they can go around and just start fucking with the dials. Everybody swears they can do that. And then, this is what you see. You're not going to have courageous Chinese men, assertive men in a society that socially represses them. You're not going to have that. Anybody says anything. I remember I was watching some videos like Vice or something about hip hop in China, and the guy was sitting there and he said he was making a comment to the camera about the Chinese government. He was criticizing the Chinese government, and the dude put his hand in front of the camera like, hey, whoa, yo, bro, you tripping. You tripping. You know what I'm saying? Don't be saying that shit on the camera, because they know the Chinese Gestapo is going to show up at your door. Now, if that's what you're doing, you're shutting down the free expression of ideas, then how do you think you're going to get courageous and assertive men when they can't even be courageous and assertive in their own country when it comes to the authorities and it comes to the power? Like there's not even a proper channels that you can go to express grievances. But yet these men that you make into a bunch of bitch asses are supposed to go out there and challenge other men who don't get down like that. Other men that come over the hill on some Viking shit, like what's in your wallet? Like China, I'm telling you, China is a African American woman. I'm telling you. I know the black women are going to be mad at me for saying that, but it's true. It's true. I've been saying this is what they do with the boys. They get on this, we must eliminate toxic masculinity and all that grapevine talk. They get on that. You know what I mean? And then when they end up with some bitch asses, then they turn around talking about, we're not protected. We're not protected. But yet you got all this feminism and LGBT and all this shit. They try to ram down, these young men's throats. We don't want men to be assertive and this, that, and the third. That sounds like evil patriarchy to me. That sounds like oppression to me. That sounds like misogynoir to me, right? They keep saying all that shit. And then when you get a bunch of bitch asses that don't go out there and operate like other races of men that by and large don't have, that type of, their women don't have that type of orientation, then you're like, oh, how come they can't compete? How come they can't this? How come they can't that? I'm like, stop fucking with the dials. In China, I look at the same way. I look at the Chinese government like a woman that doesn't understand you cannot crush, masculinity like that, and then lament over the fact that where all the men go? Where did all the men go? Because China has wild mechanisms of control in terms of controlling their population, in terms of surveillance and all of that. And I'm like, are you real? Are y'all serious? Is the Chinese government serious in asking the question, where are all of our masculine men? And they think it's all about, it's the K-pop, or we don't want this that nigga street culture. You know what I'm saying? We don't want that. We don't want what the African Americans are doing, because look at them in America, they're poor and crime infested and yada yada yada. Okay, fine, I get you, but that's not the root of the situation. The root of the situation is the fact that the Chinese government suppresses masculinity and manhood, because men who are not masculine, who are not assertive, who are not strong, will not challenge the state, and it makes it easier for the state to control. And and now they're actually sitting there saying, okay, well, we got to reverse all this. How are you going to reverse that? See, they think that they're just going to, we gone too far, let's dial it back a little bit, and we're going to somehow get to this perfect equilibrium of a Chinese assertive, muscular, athletic, cock-strong diesel man, that it has complete and utter obedience and allegiance to the Chinese government. I'm like, you're delusional. You're delusional. Because first off, seriously speaking, if we could embody what it really means to be a man, if we could really sum it up, if we could really just put it in the bottle, what does it mean to be a man in this world? I would say it's the idea that you are willing to die for what you believe. Now, what happens when what you believe is not in sync with the Chinese government or not in sync with the state? The Chinese government is going to have another set of problems on its hand. See, everything has an equal and opposite reaction. You can't just go in there and I just want to change this and get exactly what you want out of that, and that there's not going to be this equal and opposite reaction. You know what I'm saying? It's like what I tell women. I'm like, you're not going to get men who are assertive and challenge other groups of men and then come home to you and then bow down to you, the queen, and grovel, to you. You're not going to have that. That doesn't exist. If he's out there challenging other men, you see what I'm saying? And he has to assert who is alpha in that environment amongst other men. When he comes to home to you as the woman, he's not going to recognize you as his equal. You know what I'm saying? Not when he's out there in a space where he is constantly confronted with the threat of physical violence. And he has to overcome that. It's not just a matter of men just go out there and they argue with each other. No, the threat of physical violence always exists with men. And so when you walk into a space with a woman, she can say all the shit she want to say. There is no threat of physical violence coming from her. You don't have to assert yourself over her in that manner. You don't need to. But when you have women who think that, they're on par or they're on the same level as men who can constantly bring the threat of violence to your doorstep, that's where all this confusion comes in. It's like, wait, chick, what are you doing? Seriously, what are you doing? Stay in the goddamn car. The cowboy with the gun has shown up. You know what I'm saying? Your ass is pregnant. Get your ass in the car. What are you doing getting out the car? Or that woman down in Dallas, the man has pulled a gun. What are you doing swinging on him? You see? So, again, I don't know where women get this idea that, the whole world is just misogyny and rape and pillage and women are equal and all this other stuff and yada, yada, yada. I don't know where women get all that idea. Even China, the credit I will give the Chinese government is even China recognizes if you got weak men and you have a nation, keep in mind, this is a nation we're talking about. As a black man, I'm just talking about the community. I'm just talking about a black community. And I'm like, that's just the microcosm of a nation. You know what I mean? When I'm talking about the black community or I'm talking about a black household, I'm like, no, these are the fundamental blocks of a nation. Now I know people disagree with the idea of having a nation within a nation, but I'm saying if you're going to have an intact community, you got to get the fundamental block of the family in order and they got to have the proper orientation. And then if you're going to have something bigger than a community or something that's networked with other black communities all across America, then all of those communities have to have the proper orientation. And China recognizes this, obviously because it's this homogenous society. But I'm saying China recognizes this. They're like, shit, we out here trying to grab territories and take over, our neighbors and shit like that and claim the South China Sea. And we got a bunch of, young men that can't even win themselves, a World Cup. Because, what people don't recognize about sports, why sports are so important? Sports are a reflection of war. Right? You have two teams that come to a field, right? There's rules of engagement where, that's tenable when talking about war. But I'm saying, they agree to the terms and then they challenge each other, right? And it's the men on the field coordinating with other men, demonstrating their tactics, right? This blows my mind about China, right? I'm like, isn't this the people that came up with the art of war? What's his name? Sun Tzu? Isn't this the people that came up with the art of war? And they don't even know how to make warriors, right? Just wild. Sun Tzu did when he cut them women's heads off, because they thought it was funny. When he said that he was going to turn them into warriors and shit. You see? But, no, it's China is like, I swear, the Chinese government don't take accountability for shit. It's always somebody else's fault. And I'm like, but you have total control. I mean, literally total control. In other words, they lived in their own little bubble. The Chinese did, all this ancient Chinese orientation of what's the ideal Chinese. I'm like, well, if you're trying to assert yourself on the global stage, when you go out there and you look around and you see how other groups operate, you have to adjust and adapt to that. Chinese isolationism is no longer going to work. Chinese sitting there, got these boys, they up there singing these, Chinese corny ass lame high school ballads, right? They're up there singing that. You ever see the Chinese, like the like events and stuff like that? They get up on the stage. It's like a corny ass high school, rehearsal and shit. And they get up there and, singing in Mandarin. And the guy's got, just this perfect hair, no muscles, no masculinity, no nothing, no spice, no swag, no nothing. You know what I mean? It's almost like watching the freaking Koreans when they do their shit. The North Koreans, when they it's like, am I in a high school like recital or some shit like that? Right? That's what it feels like. Right? And they pump that on TV. Right? Again, they banned fucking what do you call it? They banned the hip hop. You know what I mean? And Cap always brings up this episode, and I still haven't seen it, but he always brings up this episode with China Mac. And China Mac went to somewhere and he brought goons with him. I don't know if it was Vlad or something. He brought goons with him. And China Mac was like, who the fuck said they was gonna smack me? You know what I mean? And they did all this rigmarole, but Cap did not like the way that the black men handled that situation. And somebody's probably gonna send me the link or whatever. I'll finally sit down and look at it. But I'm saying, here you got China Mac taking on the demeanor of what would usually be said would be an African American, right? China Mac, he talked about why he stopped using the N-word and all this stuff, because when he went to prison, the guys on Rikers Island made him understand, what that word means to certain people, yada, yada, yada. But I'm saying, you know what I mean? Like here you have a Chinese American in America who, to a great degree, has taken on African American street persona and is doing it better than the African Americans in terms about what he ain't going to tolerate, what he's not going to deal with, and all that shit, right? And talked about his family's in Chinese gangs and we don't let outsiders in the gang and all that, right? I saw the situation where they had a Chinese woman and she was beat up. Somewhere in New York, she got punched in the back of the head. I don't know who did it, whether they were black or not black or whatever, you know what I mean? But he put out a video, you know what I mean? He was defending the shit. Like, yo, you could come see me, da 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 da. And I'm like, oh, manhood shit. See, would China tolerate that? You see what I'm saying? You want China wants China Mac responses or China Mac behavior, but they don't allow that type of behavior. Like, I'm looking at the Chinese government like, fuck you, get the fuck out of here. I mean, completely get the fuck out of here. You know what I mean? And you get these people, these Chinese like diplomats and all this other stuff. Oh, they're so educated and they're this and they're that and they're so bright and da 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 da. They say all this stuff, right? And they got all the degrees and everything, but at the end of the day, they're lames. You know what I'm saying? And it's like maybe, all the people, because I saw in the Chinese video that the woman did on YouTube, that they were saying that, well, my father is manly. And I'm like, well, your father's from a different generation. Your father's from, probably, a byproduct of these are probably second generation of the Mao Zedong, because I remember, how old these women are. Probably they are the children of the men that did what was it called? The Great Journey, the Long Walk or something like that, right? Where he just went around the country, and then you got the other group that broke off and went to Taiwan, and that's how you got the whole Taiwan-China thing, right? So I'm saying different generation. I mean, they literally, you're talking about a generation of Chinese men who killed people. Or at least the grandfather killed people. You know what I'm saying? And now you only have a situation where it's just the Chinese government that kills people. Anybody who dissents gets killed. Anybody who dissents gets thrown in prison. And I'm like, so you basically instill in young Chinese boys to be obedient and grovel at the feet of the Chinese government. But then you're actually asking the question of where are all the masculine China? Are you fucking kidding me? Are you kidding me? Again, that's why I say I look at the Chinese government like I'm like you sound like some black women over here. I mean you asking the wrong questions. And I'm saying this is shit that you facilitated. This is what you wanted. You didn't want toxic masculinity and all that. You wanted obedient men who acted just like women, and that's what the fuck you got. And now you have the audacity to sit around and, oh, well, God, we got to reverse this. And I'm like, first off, the way that the Chinese government is structured and the way that they conduct themselves and do business is not conducive to the type of manhood and masculinity that you're looking for that is capable and equivalent to go out there and challenge other races of men in their masculinity. It's incapable. And see, they know that, which is why they're trying to adjust. But see, the thing is, it's going to take more adjusting than just, oh, we made a decree and we're going to just, no. The whole of Chinese society would have to adjust. They would have to allow for more individual freedoms. They would have to create a system where men who are assertive are rewarded. Obviously, they're going to tweak it in a way that the men who are assertive, in terms of the Chinese government, in favor of the Chinese government, obviously they're going to try to find a balance between that and go, again, fuck with the dials. Do I think that they're going to achieve that? No, because China is so far over in terms of the dial, in terms of, individual freedom and everything else like that. They're so far away, from that. And then, like, I just think about it. How do you have an assertive, courageous, brave, stands for what he believes in, a Chinese masculine man in a country that has a government like the Chinese government? I mean, the way that they admonish, the stupid thing is they don't even recognize how much they're embarrassing their own men and emasculating their own men before the world when you get a pop star that has to apologize on state television because he was smoking a fucking cigarette. Oh my God. I'm just looking at China. I'm like, you's a black woman, yo. You are African American. Well, I know sisters ain't gonna like that, but no, it's true. It's true. You're doing the same thing that single black mothers do to their black boys in the inner city. You're doing the same thing. Bitchify, sissify, wussify, and then you turn right around and you start complaining that all these men are weak and we need strong men. And if we don't have strong men, and it's just over. This is just so hilarious to me. It's so hilarious because I'm like, how do you not see this? How do you not see this? You know what I'm saying? And quiet as it's kept, Japan does a lot of the same shit. They got these Japanese idols and all this other stuff. And when they don't do something or they're caught, right, because they got to maintain these squeaky images. And then when they get caught doing what normal young people do, you know what I'm saying? They up in front of the camera and they're bowing and shit. Hi. You know what I mean? They had that Japanese girl. They made her shave her head and all this other shit. You know what I mean? I'm like, you embarrassing people, because they don't do what the state does. And, they stepped out of line and everything. Well, that whole staying in line isn't conducive to assertiveness. It's not. This is why Chinese men have the reputation that they have in the West. This is saying, check that white men argue about, well, Chinese men, they're good workers, unlike the Negro. They're good workers, but they're not assertive enough. That's why you don't see Asian Americans in leadership. That's why we created a bamboo ceiling, because Asian men are just not assertive enough. Great workers, fantastic. They make excellent middle managers, but in terms of leading the company, Chinese men can't lead shit, and that's how it's viewed. Asian men can't lead shit. And that is their global reputation. That is how they're viewed. You know what I mean? And so China's so concerned about, its own internal affairs that it completely ignores the external, view. And I'm saying pretty much all Asian countries, view that. I mean, I remember with Cap and I, we used to talk about that. Like you go and let's talk about the Japanese now, right? You go and you look at the Japanese, you know what I'm saying? These motherfuckers, just taking people's, heads and shit. Eagles, you know what I'm saying? Like they were just taking people's heads and shit and on some samurai shit. And then all of a sudden now, it's like we went from samurai to fucking Hello Kitty. You know what I'm saying? I mean, damn, did the U.S. just bomb the masculinity out of Japan? I mean, goddamn. And then you got the South Korea with the K-pop. And that's another thing. That's why you get all these Chinese men, they all mad and shit. Yeah, because that's right. These other non-Chinese, non-Asian men are coming in and stealing your bitches. Because they come in there and Western men are working out and they're in the gym and they tend to be taller. You know what I mean? They come in there and all cock strong. And if they know a little bit of Mandarin or Cantonese, they gonna steal your bitch. You know what I'm saying? Because again, the world is becoming more global and people are accustomed to how other groups of people look and this, that, and the third. And you got a Chinese dude getting admonished because he's smoking a cigarette, and then here you got some fucking cockstrong African dude from Ghana and shit, looking like Jaimin Hansu, like he just hopped off the Amistad. You know what I mean? Hell yeah, that little Chinese girl gonna be like, hee. Like these little black and Chinese interracial relationships, as we said. That's why the Chinese be mad and shit, be chasing them black men out of them towns and whatnot, because they mad because niggas be stealing they bitch. You see, and ain't enough bitches to go around. So, I'm like, I'm just looking at it. I'm like, what it is? Like me, I'm a very logical person. And when I see, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's a nation. I don't care if it's a person. I don't care if it's a panel of people. Anytime I see people doing some illogical shit, you know what I mean? And then they do some stupid shit and then they complain later on. I'm like, how did you not see this coming? How did you not see this coming? You know what I'm saying? Every other day I get all these notifications, all these YouTube channels of all the massive amounts of executions they have in China. You know what I mean? For the slightest infractions of shit. You went up against the state. You know what I mean? They be killing billionaires and everything else. They're killing their alpha males. You know what I'm saying? You got to be alpha to become a billionaire. They killing their billionaires. Because, you become too powerful. Jack Ma is still missing. Oh, too powerful. And they're sitting around talking about where are our assertive men. I'm like, the audacity of the Chinese government. You suppress or repress or just flat out execute on one hand, and then you sit there and go, where do they all go? Like that, oh my God, like that shit is so hilarious. It's hilarious. And again, all these Western men that I see, white men, black men that are talking about feminism and LGBT and all this nonsense in the West, they're looking at it like, oh, we're trying to see this as a global problem. No. China is in a different category. China different. That's a whole, in other words, their problem is the result of their, repressive regime and the way that their government is structured. Nothing is to be challenged. Nothing is to be questioned. You know what I mean? Like they got laws in China where if you it's like you disrupted the harmony of the society or some shit like that. Like you go to jail for that. You go to jail for that. I'm like, so where you think you gonna get warriors out of that? Again, America, it plays, this delicate dance with masculinity, and many people have been pushing back and they see it. You got Joe Rogan did a show where he was talking about, the special operations and how they don't even have full teams in special operations. You got Americans that can't even pass the PE test. They can't even pass the physical examination. They're coming in there overweight. You know what I'm saying? Even if the U.S. tried to have a draft, they'd have a huge obesity problem. You know, and everything's all good and well to have a bunch of bitch ass men that the government can easily control until you're trying to go to war. Then when you're trying to go to war, it's like, oh shit. Where's our soldiers? Private, where's our soldiers at? Where's our soldiers at? Well, sir, 45% of them we had to send home because they were overweight. They didn't meet the PE requirement. Well, wait, they didn't meet the PE requirement. You need to change the PE requirement. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden they got a bunch of fat soldiers like what you saw at the fucking Capitol. Freaking, what's his name? What's that sergeant's name? You know, the one that did the CNN freaking, fully semi-automatic. What was his name? Some cop, angry cop, right? His name is Angry Cop, but then like his shirts say Angry Corpse, right? Like the arm, the military branch. I don't get that. But anyway, Angry Cop, he did a video just recently on fat soldiers. Dude's fucking stomach was hanging out of his goddamn plate carrier. You can't go to war with that. And then again, it's just, you got all this LGBT shit and da-da-da-da. And then I'm like, why are you pushing this? And then you want to go to war. It's like the society balances, tries to go back and forth between, well, we want men to be weak and bitch asses and non-assertive so we, the government, can control them. But then when you got to go to war, then it's like, shit, we need soldiers. Fuck, where are they at? And it's like, you don't have any soldiers because they're all fucking, LGBT now, sir. You know what I mean? Or they're all, on some other shit. Or they don't believe in war. They don't believe in violence. You squeezed all the masculinity out of them. And then you end up with a society where, again, going back to female nature, women are only going to be attracted to men that are masculine. That's what they're attracted to. That's the problem we got in the black community. Where all the women, they all want the thugs and the bad boys and everything else. I can say that I got problems with them and they're not being responsible and everything, but I can't say and I won't say that they're not masculine. You see, it may not be in the appropriate sense, again, tied to responsibility, but yet and still, like, they are masculine. I can recognize why a woman would be into some tattooed cockstrong, look like he just does push-ups, 200 push-ups a night. I can see why she's moved by that. And so when you sissify the productive men in society, or the men that are, that are basically like, it's like what Jordan Peterson said. What did he say? He said something to the effect of a useful male is a violent. What did he say? Hold on, I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna get the quote because I'm not gonna fuck it up. Where's it at? Let me go in here and let me go to images. Hold on, it's in here. Here it is. A harmless man is not a good man. A good man is a very, very dangerous man who has it under voluntary control. Jordan Peterson. Let me read that again. A harmless man is not a good man. A good man is a very, very dangerous man who has it under voluntary control. You see? And so, when we discuss all this manhood shit and you try to eradicate, your alpha males because, okay, we're no longer in wartime. We're going to turn you all into some bitches, right? And we're going to encourage bitch assness, right? Again, women, they're going to get with what they perceive to be masculine, and what they go out there doing, they get with the, the alpha males or what they perceive to be alpha males and have babies by those men. And then you have this whole broken chain because since those men are not responsible, despite the fact that they're masculine and alpha, those young men that those women have with those men, and even the daughters that they have that don't have the proper orientation because now they don't see a positive, proper example of a man, and neither do the boys, those boys are not getting instilled with manhood training. And so what you end up with is this explosion of rogue males. You end up with this explosion of, so let me get this right. So all your men that would otherwise be productive are all basically LGBT gay and everything else, and sissified and wussified and feminine and all that shit. They're all effeminate and all that crap. And then the men that are actually masculine are non-productive and rogue males and commit all the heinous crimes in society and everything else. I'm like, oh, way to tear down this society, genius. Way to fuck it all up, genius. You know what I mean? Sometimes I look at the government like, the fuck is you doing? What are you doing? You know? And then you got these roaches, these fucking people that come through and they feed off of the destruction. You know, like the senators and politicians go, oh, we must create more prisons for the prison industrial complex. And, you know, I just so happen to have, you know, $5 million worth of stock in that company. and then turn around and then say, you know, look at all the crime. You know, we need more gun control. We need more mechanisms that we control. Right? They go up there and they say all this shit. You know, vote for me. I'll solve all this, right? And then they don't fix anything. They don't create jobs or economic opportunity. Just build more prisons, put more cops on the street, arrest more people. I get richer and richer, right? And nobody gets it. Nobody gets it in this society. I mean, it's hilarious. It's hilarious. And that's just talking about the West. You know what I mean? But then you go over to China, and again, you get that whole aspect of, I'm supreme leader, and I just gonna say what I feel, and everybody's gonna agree with me. You know what I mean? Like would you want to be sitting in one of them rooms with them red curtains and the stars all over the place, and Xi Jinping says something, and then you're like, you raise your hand like, I disagree, sir. Like, yeah, fucking right. Yeah, right. It's not gonna happen. You know, or you get the people that Xi Jinping, he goes and says, okay, I want you to do this and figure it out. You know, you're the expert. Go do this. You know what I mean? And it's like, you know, they're not going to come up with anything that's going to seem, you know, radical or something. Like again, you don't get the free flow of ideas. You don't get that exchange. You don't get that, you know, even common ground where it's like, okay, I see where you're coming from. All right, I do see where you're coming from, but I still disagree, and this is why I disagree. Like, you don't get that back and forth. You don't get that, you know, and then over time, you adjust your opinion, and then even you start espousing the other person's point of view and saying, well, I used to think this way, but now I do see that where this is a problem. And so then you come up with a new theory because you have to adjust from the old theory, because now the old theory no longer holds water because you have new information that you didn't consider before. You see? But that only comes when you have the free flow and exchange of ideas. But when you don't have that, and you don't encourage, you know, people to raise their hand and speak up, and you crush dissent and all that other shit, and, you know, there's going to be disagreements. But if you out there and you just you disagree, you must not be, you must be trying to disrupt the harmony of the society. You know, off with his head, execution. You know what I mean? And you do all that shit, man. People ain't gonna speak up. And then people stop speaking up, and then you start having one person making call all the shots, and then they could be dead wrong, and then unfortunately you won't find out how wrong you were until 30 years later, when you have situations like a 70 million, male to female fucking deficit. You know what I'm saying? Or female to male deficit. You know, it's like, you know, like I said, you make bad decisions, there's consequences. Okay? At the end of the day, you know, people can sit there and piss, shit, and fart with you, argue with you, scream at you, yell at you, stomp their feet, jump up and down. You know what I'm saying? Time is always right. Time is always right. So eventually, you know, everybody's theories and ideas will be put into the test. And at some future date, it will be stated. It will be like, okay, well, how's that working out for you? You did this at such and such a date. You started this with 30 years ahead in the future. Okay, how did that work out for you? You see? I mean, literally, generations have been born, and you got to ask the question, well, okay, we went in that direction. How did that work out for you? You know, and it's mind-boggling how you'll get people that, like, you know, they're of the new generation, and it's like you can show them that this happened in the past and they were dead wrong, and somehow yet and still they think they can double down on what was already proven to be wrong. That always blows my mind. You know, I mean, that just completely blows my mind. But anyway, I'm just saying, I mean, I'm having a ball here, you know, with this video. I mean, I really am. I'm having a ball because I love it. I love when I get to slam, you know, people, nations, institutions, whatever you want to call it, for their lack of logic. I love it. I get a kick out of it. I'm like, oh, so you really thought you was just going to suppress, you was just going to suppress every aspect of male assertiveness and courageousness and challenging, you know, that men do. I mean, that's what the whole aspect of sports is. You're challenging other men, but you think you're going to get men that, you know, openly want to challenge other men, but aren't going to challenge the government. I'm like, again, you know, for further evidence, I direct you to the Trump supporters that stormed the Capitol. You see, you know, that's what happens when you get people that, you know, regardless of whether they're right or wrong, you know, yay, you got to give it to them. They, you know, went as far, you know, to put action, you know, towards what they fucking believe. Y'all can say they didn't have a plan and they had this, you know, and them motherfuckers said, we storming that bitch, and they did. That much has to be respected. You see. And again, nations that want to control its populations, you know, they don't ever want to be confronted with that. So they go out there and they repress, you know, this sort of ideas and free thinking and all that stuff and that level of assertiveness or even that level of entitlement. You know what I'm saying? Those people stormed the Capitol. They thought to themselves, they were like, it's my country. Like they went in there like they owned the bitch. You know what I'm saying? Like you'll never see some Chinese people storming, you know, whatever the Communist Party resides at and be outside protesting and talking about this is my country. Like you'll never see no Chinese people do that. You know, you never see Chinese men do that. You know, and with that said, which is why, you know, the ambitions of the state most likely will never be met. It'll never be met because the whole structure of the society is not conducive to producing the very type of men that they would need in order to facilitate their ambitions. And with that said, that is my video. SWP out.